Hey, today we're going to talk about a slightly controversial topic. And as some of you are aware, I haven't actually spoken about food production and food philosophy on here for a while. And yes, I still am vegan, have been for the last 11 years. And I really been wanting to talk about this topic for a number of years, and now feels like a great opportunity. Now also that some people are becoming aware of certain things. As more people question beliefs of food production and philosophy, more perspectives appear to be pushed for various reasons. We won't venture into too many of those rabbit holes at the moment, but not only is there a lot of ethics of the human changing due to as we're evolving into particular states of being, there can also be particular narratives or agendas being pushed to keep us in a particular way. That's all I can say. So, as some of you are aware, there are many ethical reasons as to why people would choose to eat less animals and their byproducts. There are also various reasons for them as well beyond ethics. There's also health reasons. Some people talk about environmental reasons. Some people also talk about faith, belief, spiritual based reasons as well. So many people may find that eating a more plant-based diet is actually more beneficial to them. They notice particular health effects from doing so, and for various health reasons, they may even venture into that in the first place. Now, obviously, we're not talking about highly processed foods or what I would call Franken foods. These are not this kind of fake meats, fake cheeses, dairy alternatives, alternatives to other things. These are very much sitting a lot more on the spectrum of what we would call whole foods, and a lot less process is going on. If it is in a packet and it's got an ingredient list, you can understand a lot of those ingredients, and a lot of those ingredients might be things that you have in an everyday sort of cupboard, or a health cupboard, shall I say. And as some people are becoming more aware, there are particular kinds of highly processed foods that are being produced that may be pushed for particular reasons. And because, as we're aware, highly processed foods are usually more detrimental to the human body and mind and emotional state of being, usually because of the way that it affects the gut and the gut microbiome. And what I'm really going to focus more on is I want to talk about these concepts of eating insects and also eating lab-grown flesh. Now, these kinds of things are being marketed as being more ethical, healthier, and affordable for human consumption. And obviously, affordability is still something that we need to account for, because many people still are in a place of having to factor that in regards to the food that they're buying and the food that they're choosing. And some people are under immense economic pressures, which does limit sometimes their choices. Obviously, we don't want to be naive to that. And it's interesting that there's been such a push for these foods. Why is it being pushed so much? If it's such a good thing, wouldn't the consumer just naturally gravitate towards it? It's a question. Are they really more ethical, healthier, and affordable? In regards to ethics, well, animals, if it's in regards to eating insects, animals are still being consumed. So for some, that still wouldn't be necessarily in alignment with their ethics. If you look at animals in regards to a spectrum and what animals you feel more comfortable causing harm to, then obviously for some people, they're going to have a different view on whether eating insects is ethical or not. And obviously, when you're still eating things like flesh, whether it's lab grown or it is from what we would consider more of a normal means of farming an animal, then it still programs us and our psyche to consume flesh, and that it's necessary to do so in such quantities that most people do. So in regards to the ethics of that, that's what I would be questioning, is still the psychology around having to consume the flesh of another being. So when we're looking at the health aspects of these things, it's not really concrete, because we can see that there's actually more science is needed to know more about the long-term effects of eating lots of insects and eating lab-grown flesh. Because let's face it, humans are not great with portion control, and we can often overdo it. So, if we're overdoing it on a particular food, what's the long-term impact of that? We don't know, because we haven't been growing flesh in a lab for very long, and people haven't been consuming it for very long, unless it's already very much in our food production and we're not told of it. That's always a potential, but we'll need some more science around that, about whether it is actually healthier for us to do so. Yeah. All right, so affordability, well, most likely growing your own insects probably would be more affordable. I wouldn't dispute that, depending on what insects they are. There are groups of people that probably show you how to do that in your home using very basic materials and particular kind of food scraps that these insects will be feeding on. Obviously, if you wanted to consume them to the level of flesh that most people would eat, because most people eat flesh in their food like 2 to 3 times a day, and in this sort of more developed part of the world. I don't like using that term, but that's just what's come to my mind right now. You get what I mean? You would have to eat a lot of insects to be able to get to that level. Now, obviously, if you were going to look at the affordability of lab-grown flesh, that too could be potentially cheaper, because you're not having to use a whole lot of land. However, you would still require particularly sophisticated technology to be able to produce such food, or food, I say. And it also would mean that there would be less everyday farmers and food producers, and it could also likely lead to quite a monopoly of the market. Now, some of us are aware that there is quite a push to monopolize a lot of the food production for various reasons. As to what those reasons are, I'm not going to go into that in this vlog here. I don't see the purpose of that right now. You can do your own research for that. It's just starting to rain here, so bear with me. We'll see how heavy it gets. And so yes, obviously things like eating insects and lab-grown flesh are topics to be had, especially in regards to food philosophy and belief systems, especially in this sort of modern day world that many of us are finding ourselves in. If I can share on a more personal level, for me, real sustainability and health is more about allowing people to become more sovereign, and which often involves actually decentralizing food production. And also it's going to require an actual big cultural and a belief shift away from convenience to actual proper compassionate care, and recognizing the interconnectedness of what it is that we consume, where it comes from, how does it get to the plate, what's involved to get it there, not just monetarily, but also all the inputs that are involved. And I personally am not a big fan of monopolizing food production for various reasons, but I'm also aware that some people are probably maybe in a different spectrum of that, and of a different belief system of that. Obviously for myself, I'm a lot more about getting away from large populated areas into spaces that you have more space, you can actually grow some of your own food. And that's not to say you need to grow all of your own food. but you find what it is that you like to produce and that your land is very happy, or is quite reciprocal in producing food for you. And then obviously, if you're living in an area where your neighbours are doing such things, then there's trading that can happen. Or ideally, even if you're living on land with many other people, then everyone has their what we might call passion projects that they're involved in. Yeah, when you're able to grow more of your own food, there is various benefits that can come from that, not just financially, but also mentally and emotionally, and even energetically for the being, and probably physical health as well. There's a lot that could be uncovered and dived into for this topic, but we're probably going to leave that here. If you've got anything that you want to add, then you're welcome to do that in the comments section down below. If you've got any more private questions, you can contact us on the various social media links, and there's an email address down there as well. And we'll see you in the next vlog.